Hi, welcome to another episode of Mom Does It All. If you're looking for encouragement, empowerment, and uplifting in motherhood and mompreneurship, this is a show for you. I'm your host, Marcia Spurk, triplet mom, woman empowerment coach, and all things motivation extraordinaire. In this episode, I'll be talking about how the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Would you rather be your worst enemy or your best friend? Let's get right to it. It's been officially 3 weeks since I opened up my virtual school, the Empowered Woman School, and it has been amazing to see all the feedback that I've been getting from the new students joining in and all the suggestions, because this is exactly why I created this school, is that I wanted them to tell me what they wanted to hear next, and preparing the classes has been so fun because I am learning too as I'm preparing the classes and researching and putting stuff in there and finding about other, professionals and experts and looking into their work because I'm doing this research, and it's just been amazing. And one thing that I have been putting in the school for the Brazilians is some materials and resources for English learning. And it's interesting because for the longest time, I knew I didn't want to go back to teaching. I taught online here in the US after having the kids for almost a year, and then I decided I didn't want to do it anymore because it wasn't worth it financially, and frankly, I make a lot more money interpreting. And I didn't really see myself teaching English again. But when all of this started with the Brazilians, I realized that I could combine English learning with this coaching and make my coaching a lot more tangible, because oftentimes when I talk about self-confidence and self-love, it just seems something that's kind of far away, you can't really put your finger on, but it really affects all areas of your life, including English learning when you think about it. And we go back to the whole thing of the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, because if you lack self-confidence, this is going to show up in every area of your life. It's going to show up in your relationships. You're going to struggle. You're going to get annoyed at people easily. You're going to be criticizing a lot more. And that's all because you criticize yourself and you don't learn to really trust and love yourself. And the same thing goes for, speaking a language. I've been talking to all of these Brazilians that have been living in the US for years. It's not like a year thing. It's people that have been here for even 20 years that still feel insecure and afraid to speak the language because they feel shy, they feel they're going to be, made fun of, or they're just, they don't really want to put themselves out there, period. And now with all the coaching work that I have been doing, I know I can help these women with the confidence, even if I'm not, teaching them specifically grammar. I have been finding ways of turning even my own materials. For example, this very episode right now, I can use this as a way of teaching them English, because this was actually a suggestion that one of the students made was, why don't we transcribe some of your episodes? Because even some of them that speak pretty good, when they listen to the episode, there are words that they don't know, or because I'm talking fast, it's harder for them to understand. So I started transcribing one of the episodes and I was like, all right, now you continue. And they started it and I was amazed at how well they did. They just missed a couple words here and there. And they loved the exercise. And so this is the kind of stuff that I have been putting in the school, different ways for you to look at language learning, because this is something that I have learned throughout the years of being a teacher, especially as I had the opportunity of working with a specific methodology created by the school called Berlitz that I taught both online and in person in Brazil, is that first of all, they don't use a second language in the classroom. It's only the target language that they're using. So, for example, if you're trying to learn English, they're not going to translate anything. Even from day one, of course, when you're very basic, it's kind of harder. But as you advance, you try to ask for things in different ways, to ask for meaning, to explain what you want to say, because this is what it would be like if you move to a country and they don't speak your language. What would you do? And so coming from this perspective and understanding language acquisition, since that's what I've studied my entire life, I know that submerging yourself is the best way. And so that's why I encourage them to listen to music, to watch TV, because this is something that I have come to realize it's very, very common. People move to the US and then they live like they're not here. So they're part of that community. They only watch TV TV shows of their language. They only listen to music with their language. And so that makes it really hard for you to gain the confidence to speak because you are not participating in that culture. And that's another thing too, because language is very social and very emotional. It's not just learning, nouns, pronouns, or whatever. It's understanding that mindset. And how beautiful is it that this makes absolute sense with the coaching work that I do? Because in order for you to really be a part of the culture and speak that language, you have to have an emotional connection with that. You have to see yourself with that identity. And if your original identity is not even clear to you and you don't like that and you don't love that, how will you add something else to your plate? And so that's why, the work of this school, the Empowered Woman School, it can encompass language learning, but it really goes beyond that because it's a work of really trusting and loving yourself. And what's even more amazing is that even though this work is directed to women, at least for now, I have had increasingly more men messaging me and saying, this is great. Can you tell me more? And I have to tell them, well, I'm only focusing on women. Or there are even other men that know that I only work with women and they still will message me and tell me your podcast is so rich. The content is just great. I have been learning a lot. And this just fills my heart because there is no doubt that this message is for everyone. It's not just for women, of course, because all of us have insecurities, right? But of course, my heart is with women, especially with moms, as I have said over and over again. And we'll see what the future brings. But I've already expanded from moms to women in general, and then from, only English speaking to Portuguese speaking. So the sky really is the limit. We'll see what happens. And so what I really wanted to talk about today is that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything, which is something that I had already heard, that I was already aware of. But this contact with Brazilians has made this so much stronger for me because it's made me realize these women are having such a hard time adapting to the culture and speaking the language because they're not really aware of themselves. And that is affecting that. And how many times has your lack of self-awareness and self-love and self-acceptance affected you in your life to move forward and to do something that you've been wanting to do, but for some reason it's not happening for you? And this goes back to my own journey too, with finding my audience, finding myself so that I can better serve these people. And this whole journey of reconnecting to Brazil has been a process of me accepting that part of me that I was rejecting, that I didn't even know. And see, this is how this work is so important, because maybe it is something that you're aware, but most likely it's not. And that's why you're not advancing, because you literally don't know what's keeping you. So you keep banging your head against the wall, not understanding why you're not advancing in that area in your life, whether it be your relationships, whether it be, raising your kids or your professional life, your job, whatever it may be. There must be, I am sure, an area of your life right now that you're unsatisfied with. Maybe it's your health. Maybe you've been trying to improve your health and get into a routine for a while, and that hasn't worked out for you. Why is that? What is keeping you from moving forward? And I will tell you again, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So what is it that you're doing in the other areas of your life that's actually keeping you from advancing in the one that is being more difficult for you? And one thing that I have been seeing lately, too, that goes really well with this message is that we come and say, we are our worst critics. And there's actually something that resonated even more with me that says you can either be your worst enemy or your best friend. And isn't that true? So if you are most likely your worst critic, in everything that you do, you're always thinking, it could have been better. Oh, you look at that picture and you say, I don't look that great. Let's take another one. Or let's not post that because I'm not comfortable with that. Or my voice sounds terrible. I don't want to hear myself. Like, how many times do we think of ourselves negatively and we just have these ugly thoughts of yourself? That means you are being your worst enemy. Don't we say all the time in business and even in health and fitness, they say you are your own competition, right? You have to prove something to yourself, not to others, because it's true. We end up being our own worst enemies. We're the ones stopping us from advancing. And this goes back to what I did in the beginning of the year, I launched this challenge called Get Out of Your Own Way, because I had been on this journey of understanding that I'm the one stopping myself from moving forward. We have the tendency of looking outwards and trying to put blame on people all around us for our failures, when in reality, if we just learn to look inward and realize that we are stopping ourselves because we're worrying so much about what others think, we would be living a very different life, a life of freedom. And so what I wanted to tell you today is to invite you to be your best friend. Can you imagine that? Being your best friend, somebody that's always supporting you and loving you for who you are, who's willing to listen. So let's break this down a little bit. How do you become a best friend? So let's think about, in a sense of another person, and then let's bring that back to you. What does that mean for you to be a best friend? It's someone that takes the time to know you, right? Somebody that is not selfish, that talks about themselves the entire time, but they actually take the time to listen to what you have to say, to listen when you're sad, and to recognize when, your talents and your gifts and when you're doing great. Someone who understands what you like, someone who knows who you are. So who are you? This is a question that's been coming up a lot in this school is, what do you like? What do you want out of life? Who are you? Have you been asking yourself these questions? Because if not, then that means you're really not your best friend. So how can you become your best friend? And this is exactly what I have been aiming to teach at the Empowered Woman School, because an empowered woman, what is the definition of empowered? Is someone that takes responsibility for their happiness, for their freedom, for their fulfillment. Somebody that is not expecting anybody else to do it for them. So that's what it means to be your best friend. And of course, best friends sometimes give themselves some tough love, right? Give their friends some tough love and point the things that are not going well. But the idea here is not to be such a critic, but actually embrace that person and love them for who they are. But first, you have to know who that person is. And this is what I say all the time. Who are you, right? You have to get to know yourself, because the only way you're going to love yourself is if you get to know yourself. And once you know yourself and love yourself, you can trust yourself. You can trust your gut. You can trust that inner voice that tells you to move forward or to stop and wait. And this was one of the things that we talked about last week in the school, was when do you know when to take action, and when do you know when to just sit back and wait and rest into that moment and just have inner peace. And it was interesting that when I went with that topic, I decided to go back in history and analyze the differences between really the foundation of American culture and Brazilian culture. And it was interesting to see how our countries were both founded in very, very different terms, which affects our mindset to this point. And even though most likely, if you're listening to me, you're not Brazilian, I'm going to share just a little bit of this, because it will let you see how important it is for you to get to know yourself and go back into your past and understand where your thought patterns come from, because this is the very thing that's keeping you from moving forward. So, and I just find history so interesting. I've told you this before. I've been watching the Vikings, and it's amazing because it really takes me back to my years of school and, high school, and even in college, both for my bachelor's and master's. I studied a lot of history, because when you study languages, you study history, period. And so basically the United States started with a different agenda, right? People came as refugees, most of the people as refugees, to build a new life, right? So their intent was, I'm going to build a new country, a new community. They were investing in that land to build something greater for themselves, to build a new home, right? So it was, they were trying to populate this place. Whereas Brazil, it was a colony of exploration, right? Of exploitation, I should say. So the Portuguese and the European and Latin America in general, they went to that place to exploit, to just take their richnesses and all the wealth and to take it back. So the end goal was exportation, was to enrich Europe, not that place. That place, they were just going to drain that thing and go away. That was their agenda. That's what they wanted to do. And guess what? This mindset permeates the culture up until this day. right? And with the idea of, I don't know if this is going to work out or if this is going to work out. And because a lot of it has to do with Catholicism as well, with the idea that you have to, go through someone to reach God. And I made it very clear while I was teaching the class that I'm not talking about politics. I am not, criticizing any political view or religion. I was just talking about it in historical terms to make us understand where our mindset comes from, Brazilian mindset comes from, and where the American mindset comes from, especially when you think about the American dream. And because I was directing this to women that have moved from Brazil to the U.S., and because of the American dream, this, new opportunity, you get this conflict inside of you because coming from Brazil, you are more laid back into pursuing your dreams because the likelihood of you achieving them is not very high, and you're just, let's just trust God and see what happens. Whereas the mentality in America is, let's just go for it. Let's just make it happen. And so there is a little bit of a conflict in there, especially when you can't speak the language to actually be submerged in all of this. And so I really loved teaching that, and just a sneak peek of what we've been doing in the school that I have been really loving. And I wanted to talk about all of this to say that my work goes beyond just, confidence. Oh yeah, not tangible. Because it will apply to several areas of your life, especially to these women that are having a hard time learning and speaking English. So it really affects every area of your life to improve relationships, to improve your relationship with yourself and your health and all the things. So I wanted to share that. And I am so excited to announce something else as well that has been in the works. So I've been talking a lot about self-love lately and embracing yourself. I actually partner up with the Tea Studio shop. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you remember I had a guest on here, Carrie Chavez, that had partnered up with the Tea Studio to create a kindness collection to spread kindness all over. And I've decided to partner up with them to create a self-love collection, a love yourself collection. I approached them and I said, hey, I have these ideas, and I designed some of the teas, and they're available in their shop, and for a limited time you get free shipping, and also if you use the code MARTA, you get 15% off. And I actually have some plans of doing a couple giveaways for the people that do purchase. So I am so excited about that because the teas look amazing, and I got to model the teas, actually the tanks, and some of my pictures are in the listings on their website. How amazing is that? Never in a million years would I have thought that I would design tanks, that they would be out there for sale, that I would be taking pictures for it and be like the model for the website. So I'm so excited about that because I want to spread this message of you, trusting you and loving you, because this is the beginning of all love. Remember when Melody Gottfried was on the show and she said, self-love is true love. It has to start with us. If you don't love yourself, how are you going to love anybody else? Because you won't see past this, this wall that is in front of you, which is your lack of acceptance for yourself. So it really has to start inward, right? Looking inward. And I hope this encourages you today. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you decided to become your best friend and truly love and accept yourself today. Don't forget to check out the Tea Studio shop for the self-love collection that is launching today. The links will be in the show notes, but of course I'll be posting it everywhere. Until next time, bye.